her spouse, so we appreciate that, Carla. She professed her final vows in 2022. Originally from Mexico, she's the youngest of 4 children. She earned her degree in education and later a master's of religious sciences. She was assigned 1 year in Michigan as director of Everest Academy boarding school, and then transferred to Columbia, working for 7 years with teenagers and young adults in Regnum Christi. In 2014, Carla returned to the U.S. as the vice director of Overbrook Academy, the international boarding school in Greenville, Rhode Island. We have recently received her in Cincinnati, and we have a very well-formed young woman helping us. She's completed a certification in mentoring and personal accompaniment. She's certified as a life coach, has a vast experience directing and leading missions of evangelization. She's a spiritual director, offering spiritual retreats and apostolic formation courses and conferences. So we have a deep well from which to draw from, so we're glad to have you here, as she now lives in Cincinnati and is helping develop the young adult ministry and mission of evangelization in Cincinnati. So if you would join me in giving Carla a warm welcome.
Hello, can you hear me? No. Oh, hello? Okay. I think I'll prefer to use this microphone, because if not, I'm gonna get a pain in my back. Okay, let me just put this here. Does this work? Yeah? Okay. If you don't hear me, just like make a sign of, okay? Well, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I'm very, very happy. I arrived here to Cincinnati just less than 2 months ago. I come from DC, so it's quite a contrast. Very different realities, and I am very happy. I have to say I've been enjoying so much. The people, even people would tell me, Carla, you will never see the blue sky. And I'm like, that's not true. I'm so happy that I was deceived in that regard, right? So anyway, thank you for welcoming us. And just before I start my talk, I wanted to thank each of you, because I've been humbled to know that you do this for us. And I know that obviously, hopefully you can also get some spiritual enrichment from this moment, but we don't take this for granted. So just wanted to thank you, and I'm sure that each of us, of the consecrated women, we feel all the same gratitude and we feel loved. And I would love if you can all adopt us. I loved when Teresa shared that there's the possibility to adopt us. Please, just as we don't take for granted the generosity of people, I wouldn't want you to take for granted that we are all put together and that, no, like we need prayers. And I'm always dreaming of what we will find out in heaven, of how if I remained in fidelity, it was not thanks to me, or it's thanks to the prayers of other people, right? So anyway, I was very happy. Deb Levy reached out to me to ask me if I liked the topic of the joy of being a woman. And I knew she was going to reach out to me. And I was thinking, I hope she chooses something of being a woman, of how awesome it is to be a woman. And then I'm like, yes, of course I will give that talk. So something that I thought that would be nice, because there's so many things that we could say about the joy of being a woman. And we live in a world where, unfortunately, the word woman has been put into question, right? Now, who knows what is a woman? I'm like, sorry, like, I know who I am. I know, like, how can I not be able to say that I am a woman because I'm a woman? Like, I look at the mirror and I'm a girl, you know? But unfortunately, we live in a world that is trying to make this very confusing, right? And here we want to step out past women, and we want to say, no, like, this is the beauty of being a woman. And we should feel proud of being a woman that can get pregnant, and a woman that, because she is designed to bring life to the world, even if we don't, like for example, us consecrated women, we don't bring biological kids to the world, right? And yet I am a mother, right? Because I was designed to be a mother. And in that design that is so beautifully thought by someone that only God can have that perfection, right? To think of something so awesome as our womanhood. We have these 4 elements. I don't know if you have heard about Edith Stein. She's a saint. She was a Jewish philosopher. And then she went through a process of conversion, and she became not only Catholic but a Carmelite nun. And then she died as a martyr in the concentration camps during the war, right? So anyway, she developed all this theory of the feminine genius and these 4 traits of our femininity. And then St. John Paul II developed them more in several commentaries that he did. So I'm taking a little bit of those, but I'm also making it very applicable, because Edith Stein was this like philosopher, and I am not a philosopher. I don't underestimate that you might be, but I am not. So, but anyway, what I did to make this, to connect the ideas, is that I actually saw there's a beautiful connection between sensitivity and generosity, and there's a beautiful connection between maternity and receptivity. So we will cover the 4, but I put them in like 2 packages, okay? First, I want to share with you a little story. In the introduction that Teresa made, she mentioned that I have a heart for the missions with the poor. I always knew that I loved to do missions. Even since I was a teenager, I would just go to the mountains in Mexico and go to the poorest places where there's no, like I always look for adventure, like where's the hardest place? There, I'll go. So I would go there, of course, not by myself. But then as a consecrated woman in Colombia, I had a lot of very life-changing and impactful experiences. And I got to meet this woman. Her name is Olga Sarraza. She is, this is in Medellin. She was from a very wealthy family in Medellin. Actually, one of her brothers is a very prestigious doctor there. And anyway, when she was a teenager, she fell in drugs, addictions, and all what comes from there, right? And unfortunately, because of the addiction, she was just so anxious, like, I need drugs. So she started prostituting herself. She started doing whatever it takes for me to get what they call the bazuco, right? That it's this cigarette. It's not a cigarette, but it's just like a roll with cement and weed and like a combination to make it cheap, but to calm her anxiety. And anyway, she got married with her therapist. They had a kid, but then she had a relapse, and anyway, she ended up living in the streets for 9 years. You cannot imagine all what women in the streets suffer. I'm not gonna go into there because we are here to talk about the joy of being a woman. But I can tell you that on April the 2nd, 2005, she was walking on the street with her boyfriend, right? She had a partner, both homeless, both drug addicts. And then they stopped a little bit at a little tiny restaurant that had a TV. And by then she had been living 9 years in the streets. And she was of this mentality. I don't know if you have ever made any apostolate or ministry with homeless and drug addicts, but there's some that they're like, yes, I want to get out of addiction, but tomorrow, because I'm not ready, right? Or there are some that are like, no, you know what? I'm just going to stop trying because it's impossible. So I'm happy. So Olga was like that. Oh no, I don't want to even try. I'm happy with my alcohol, with my cocaine, and with my weeds, and I just want to die in an overdose if I ever die, right? But this one day, she saw in the TV, John Paul II died, April the 2nd, 2005. And she had been 9 years in the street, and after the first year, and after all the pain that she had to go through, she decided, I'm never gonna cry again. So 8 years without shedding one single tear. 8 years where her heart got so hardened, and where her heart was just like nobody will have the power to hurt me. I will hurt them before they hurt me. And she would always walk in the streets with a piece of a broken bottle, right, of glass to protect herself. And she did use it many times. But then that day, she hears John Paul II died. She entered to the restaurant and she describes that she couldn't but just like fall on her knees in front of the TV. And for the first time in 8 years, she started crying and crying. And it was these like almost waterfalls of tears coming out of her eyes, of all the tears that she had been holding back for 8 years. All the tears with all the sorrow, with all the vulnerability, with all the pain that she had been carrying, not only for what she suffered as a victim, but also for all the suffering that she brought to her family. And she started to feel repentant, right? And she told John Paul II, John Paul II, I don't dare to talk to God, but you are there. Help me. I want to get out of this. And she says that it's like a 2-hour prayer that she did there. And that when she stood up, she dried her tears. She grabbed the hand of her boyfriend. Let's go. We are done with this. And since then, she has been sober. And she lives a life. She even went through medical examinations to see all the consequences of all the drugs in her life. Nothing. As if she had never been addicted. It was the first miracle of John Paul II, maybe, right? It was not sent to the Vatican, but of course, John Paul II interceded. And it just made me think the power of the tears. The power that we as women have every time we cry. Every time we allow ourselves to feel that pain, or even to feel that joy, right? Because I don't know about you, but I cry a lot of joy. Also a lot sometimes of pain, right? But I tend to actually cry more of joy than of pain. But when we cry, there is something that happens in my heart. My heart opens up to the other ones. My heart becomes more receptive. My heart becomes more willing to help, to reach out to those in need. And this is something that I also learned from John Paul II, also from John Paul II, but for Pope Francis. He said in January 18th, 2017, that he went to the Philippines and he had a gathering with the youth. And there was this woman that came to him, because before the gathering, he had like a Q&A. And there was this woman that came to him, and with tears in her eyes, she asked him, Pope Francis, why do children have to suffer? And we have to think, this is a woman that lives in the Philippines, where they have these levels of poverty that none of us have seen. Radical levels of poverty, like something that we have never seen. And Pope Francis just looked at her and he said these words, right? Women have much to say to us in today's society. Women are able to see things differently than men. Women can ask questions that we men just don't get. Pay attention, he says. She, and he is pointing her, she today asked the one question that doesn't have an answer. And she couldn't say it in words. She had to say it with tears. And he kept going on, right? Then he talks about the need of learning to cry, because he says how sometimes we are very good at crying for ourselves. I don't have what I want, and I don't have all the attention, and I am not the best, or she's better than me, or why is it that I don't have all this love? And we can be complaining so much about our own pain, and we can be so self-centered. And yes, we cry, but Pope Francis is there encouraging us. Can we learn how to cry for others, for other people? And that is something very beautiful, right? And here we see, when we allow ourselves to experience the pain of other people, has it happened to you that maybe you are listening at someone right now that I was sharing with you this story of Olga, well, I call her Olgita. In Latin America, we use the ITA in a loving way, or Olguita. I would be Carlita. But anyway, I saw that some of you were shedding tears. And that happens because your heart is open in that sensitivity. And when your heart is open in that sensitivity, all of a sudden, you are tapping into this very tender part of your heart that leads you to be the best that you can be, right? Like it's something very, very beautiful and mysterious. Like the pain actually has the power in our lives to bring out the best from us. And how often we run away from pain. And we run away because we live in a world that teaches us that there's nothing good that you can take out of pain. And we live in a society that is actually trying to push you away and to teach you that all pleasures, all joy, and all fun is like as much as you run away from pain, that's how much you will be happy. But we're missing something because we are missing this connection, right? And this capacity that we have to all of a sudden tap into my very woundedness and empathize with those that are suffering. When I allow myself in that sensitivity to feel the pain of other people and to even cry and to even feel that weight in my heart, only then I can realize I actually have this interior power, right? That is the power of vulnerability. And here we see this power of vulnerability is a very amazing, like even a tool that we have as women. And I have to say, depending on how healthy our heart is, we can use this power either to manipulate or to transform this world into a better place. Because I am sure that, when I was little, I would be like, Mom, you give me permission, please, because I'm suffering, right? And I would use my sensitivity and my vulnerability to kind of manipulate. And she would be moved in compassion sometimes. Oh, poor Carla. Yes, Carla, don't worry, right? But then I was like, yes. So, of course, like those are like silly examples. But we can think, unfortunately, of many situations in which we as women actually use our vulnerability more to manipulate, right? And that can be a question that I raise here for you, for your personal reflection. Do I use my sensitivity for the good or just to get my own benefits, right? Do I use it for myself or do I use it to reach out to other people in genuine and selfless service? So that is beautiful, the power of vulnerability. And here I want to go, I put that, you can go back. You can go to that passage of the gospel. I'm not going to read the passages, but both of them, you will see two passages that we will use. This is the one where we see that Martha and Mary are grieving because Lazarus, their brother, died. And if you know a little bit of context, Jesus was best friends with Lazarus and also with Martha and Mary, right? So in the gospel, it expresses how Jesus would actually go to their house to rest, right? Like maybe when he was so stressed or overwhelmed or he just needed a time of friendship, he would go and just show up and, hey, Lazarus, how are you? And then, they were there, right? But this passage is when Lazarus dies. And Martha and Mary are eager to see Jesus come. And he's not showing up. And Lazarus is about to die. And why is he not here? And they feel this anguish and they feel this pain. And then Lazarus actually dies. And they are asking themselves, why didn't he come? And then we see in this passage, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And look at this. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And then the gospel gives us the shortest verse of the Bible. And Jesus wept. Jesus cried. That's the power that a woman had in that moment. The power to make God cry. Can you be more powerful than that? Can Our Lady be more powerful? Our Lady also felt that you know, that heart that was in ache at the wedding, and Jesus, they don't have wine. And we don't know if she cried. I don't think she cried in that moment, but she had that power over God, right? And Jesus was like, wait, Mom, it's not my time. And she's like, do what he says, right? I'm the boss here. He thinks he's the boss, but I am the boss. You just keep the secret, right? And that's just the reality, right? Women, we have a lot of power. But our power is not in imposing and in pretending that we don't have this sensitivity and like, you know, sometimes I see these riots of women that go there and they behave like men and they dress like all like, they just lose their femininity. And they think that by doing that, they are actually becoming more of a woman. I'm like, no, sorry, like, you don't represent me. I don't believe that there's the power that I contain in myself. I believe actually that's diminishing the beauty that you are holding, and you're just missing out something very important, right? So anyway, now you can go to the next slide here. I also wanted, as I talk and we see like the beauty of this sensitivity and generosity, I always go to Our Lady, right? Because who can be a better example for that? And we see the pure of heart will see God. So what happens here? Jesus gave us these Beatitudes. And he said, the pure of heart will see God. And on the other side, we know that by dogma, we know that Mary is immaculate. We know it because of the greeting of the angel, right? When he came to announce Mary that she was going to be the mother of God, he greeted her, "Hail, full of grace." So imagine if this is a cup. Well, this is for me to drink water. I didn't think of using, right? But if this cup is full of water, then it doesn't have space for Coke or for coffee. Like, it's full of water, right? So the fact, theologically, the fact that the angel called Our Lady full of grace, it means that she's full of grace. So there's no space for sin. And that is why in the Catholic Church we believe that she's immaculate. So what does it mean? Immaculate means that she has such a pure heart that she can see God so clearly. Does it happen to you? I imagine most of you are married. And maybe you know of your husband's parts or aspects that no one else knows. And maybe you're sitting at a table at a party and you see him like he's there chatting and apparently he's having a great time, but I think he is worried. And only you notice. Why? Because only you know him that deeply. So the same happened to Our Lady. She knew God so deeply in her heart because of this purity, because of the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, that she could perceive immediately and in such an intense way all the pains of God the Father. She could perceive, right? Like, God is in pain in this moment when these Pharisees are saying these things or doing those things, and they have no idea. They think they are glorifying God, but actually they are hurting him. And she could see all that. So you can imagine how, I invite you to bring into your meditation how this dogma of the Immaculate Conception, yes, it might have been a gift, right? How beautiful to see God, but how painful. How painful, because she is seeing the world with the eyes of God. And you as a mother know, right? Like, for you as a mother, it's not the same to see a random stranger suffering than to see your own children suffering. So with that same pain of a mother, she experienced that pain for God, the pain for humanity. And in that sense, we see like the beauty of her heart that was not afraid, and she never shut down her heart, right? Like, her heart, even though it was so painful, she was always open to that sensitivity, to be open to humanity. And the gospel doesn't share much, right? But I imagine that Mary would go to the well and hear the women's stories and accompany them and suffer with them. I imagine so many people loved her, and so many people maybe went to her to just pour their hearts with her. And how beautiful it must have been for Mary, but how painful, right? We see here how the pain that Mary experienced is the pain that started to create this sense of urgency in her heart, of I cannot, like, something needs to be done, right? And there's many theologians that think that in a moment when Mary was just praying to God, like, please, when are you going to send your Messiah? We need your Messiah, God. Like, can you please send him now? What can I do to twist your arm, right? Have you ever twisted God's arm? No? I recommend you to do it. But the one way to do it is through faith. Through that faith that will lead you to make heroic acts of generosity, like Our Lady. Because in that moment of prayer, there's many theologians that think that she was telling him, what will I do to, like, force you in a loving way, God, to send your Messiah right away? And she looked into her heart. What is the most precious thing that I could offer to God? What is it, right? And she thought, well, the greatest desire that I've always had in my heart is to be a mother. And then she felt this, like, ice bucket. Should I quit to that desire to convince you, God, that you need to bring your Messiah? If I do that, do you promise me that you will not fail me? My heart is aching in letting go, right? Has it happened to you that you're grasping to something? I want to be a mother. Imagine Mary, like, I want to be a mother so bad. Because God puts in our hearts the desires of those things that he wants to give to us. So imagine the intense desire that Mary had to be a mother. Like, we all have that desire. But if she was called to be not only a mother, but the mother of the Messiah and the mother of the whole humanity, how intense her desire must have been. And imagine how she treasured that desire, but in that moment of prayer, where she allowed that sensitivity to, like, inform her and to bring it to prayer, and she felt that God was asking her to do this. God, I give you this intense desire. And just as much as I trust that you will not betray me and that somehow you will still fulfill the desires of my heart, I give you this in generosity for humanity. Do we dare to do that? Do we even think how heroic Mary was in doing that act? I always think, like, we paint Mary as this, like, lofty lady. She was so courageous. And that courage came because of this. Like, she was courageous enough to feel the pain and allow that pain to inform her decisions. So many theologians think that in that moment is when the angel came, immediately. I offer you this, Lord. And then the angel appeared. Full of grace, the Lord has heard your prayer. You will be the mother. How come? Like, I just offered my maternity, right? Don't worry. We got you, Mary. We're putting everyone to work in heaven. And the Holy Spirit will come upon you, right? Imagine Mary, like, bring it to your prayer. I cannot stay here longer because we need to keep moving, but you can only imagine the level of joy and ecstasy that Mary experienced in that moment. Because she was generous, but Jesus, in Spanish we say, God will never allow himself to be beaten in generosity, right? That's an expression we use in Spanish. So anyway, here we learn this from Mary. Now we move on to the next slides. So here we move on to receptivity and maternity, right? And here I also encourage you to use the passage. It's not the same passage, it's more the passage of the anointing of Jesus in Bethany, where Mary, many people think it's the same Mary, sister of Martha. We don't know for sure, but anyway, Mary came and she anointed the feet of Jesus with this very expensive oil, right? She was so generous and just putting there all these treasures. And all the place stayed with that fragrance, right? And it was such a beautiful moment. But here we see, from the Song of Songs, we read how we are a garden enclosed. In that beautiful book, I love the Song of Songs. It says, you are a garden enclosed, my sister, my bride, a garden enclosed, a fountain sealed. And we see how in that, just as much as we are that garden, imagine a garden that has these walls, right? And because we are so sensitive, precisely because we have a higher sensitivity, sometimes we put some walls because we don't want to be hurt. And yes, there's a boundary, there's a healthy boundary. We cannot be just like totally open, allow everyone to just come in and take whatever they want, right? Like there's these healthy like walls that keep us contained, and that we don't give our heart to anyone just because, right? We need to learn how and when to give our heart. But for receiving someone in, Jesus is inviting us, come, right? Like, can you let me in? And we all, as women, we have that desire of letting someone come in. But for me to allow someone to come in, that person needs to win my trust, right? You won't, I don't know, we could talk so much about, for example, the human sexual act, right? Like you won't just have sex with any guy. Like you need to love that person, and you need to be sure that that person is not just using you. And that is why the beauty of the sacrament of marriage that frames that sacred moment into like a social structure that will protect you from being used, right? There's a commitment from a man. He wants me to be the mother of his children. He deserves my trust. So then I receive you. And I receive you in my body. I receive you also in my time, meaning that, okay, I receive my husband and then I bear a child. And that child is taking so much of my time, right? And my life. I would say it's not only the time, it's my whole life. Like I receive you and I make you part of my life. And I invest in you. But then also we have that capacity to receive a heart that is broken. Just like Our Lady, right? Or like maybe you have done it. Like when people come and tell you their stories, we receive each other, right? And how beautiful it is. I invite you here to think, can you remember right now a specific moment when maybe you felt so listened to? Try to think for a moment. Try to think of an experience where someone, in a specific moment, you were sharing something very, very deep or very personal, and you just felt so listened to. What was the effect in your heart with that listening, with that empathy? What happened in your heart? Maybe that person didn't give you any advice, but somehow you felt healed. You felt all of a sudden something was solved. And that is the power that we have to receive. And just as I hope that you all have experienced the beauty of being listened to, that then you can say, I can do this for other people. If there's been someone that has received me with that empathy and love, why couldn't I do the same? I know what it feels like. I know the beauty and the simplicity of that moment. I remember giving a spiritual direction to a woman that her mom just passed away, and she was so mad because her mom died of a very terrible, bloody, and painful cancer. It was just horrible, and this lady was so mad, like why God allowed that. And I just heard her, and she cried, and she was like hitting the pillow that she had there, and she was just like crying and letting all this out. And I just cried with her. I didn't tell her a word, I promise, nothing, just tears. And I hugged her. And after I hugged her, she said, thank you so much, Carla, for this spiritual direction. You have helped me like no one else. You're welcome. Anytime. Like I didn't say a word, but it was just maybe that empathy, and I didn't plan crying. I just cried because poor lady, like she was suffering so much, right? So we have that capacity, and in that dialogue, in that listening, I was also so enriched. And I was like moved, to pray for her, to do something, like to accompany her. So this is the beauty of this receptivity and maternity. And then here I would add this, and I would put it with the next slide, receiving the whole person with my feminine gaze. You can move on. Because here we see how to receive the whole person, we need to be aware, like what are our greatest desires? As a woman, we all have the desire to be discovered. I found these quotes that I love. A piece of art is not completed until it is contemplated by someone else. And ladies, each one of you is a piece of art. But if you have never experienced that somebody discovered you, there's something missing in your heart. If you have never felt that you have been chosen, cherished, and if you have never experienced that you, listen to this, that you are an event in the heart of someone else, something is missing in your life. And you need to figure that out. You need to be discovered. So I encourage you to be discovered. You need to be out there, right? How can you be discovered if you're hidden in a room? So this is something that can allow me, if I have this desire, could I actually fulfill that desire in other people? Could I develop a curiosity in getting to know people more deeply? Ask more questions, right? There's someone that, I can't be with her, with him or with her. Can I develop a curiosity of maybe actually there's something behind that defect that is not allowing me to see through the defect? So that I can embrace the whole person and not label that, oh, she is so whatever, right? Or he is so stubborn. Can I get rid of that label and welcome the person, right? And so here, of course, we want to be discovered and we want to be unconditionally loved. I think I already explained that. We can move on. And yet, at the same time, like, yes, I want to be discovered, but I don't want to be caught, right? Yeah, I want to be discovered in all this beauty that I have, but I don't want them to see these sins that I committed the other day or the thoughts that I had, because if somebody knows, they would be so scandalized, right? And what is the difference between one and the other? The difference is that what we are is in two things. What am I seeing and how am I seeing it? Right? Because if somebody is seeing something beautiful of me, most probable they will see me with admiration and love, and then I will feel discovered. But if they are seeing something horrible of me, most probable is that their eyes will be like, and they will show scandal or discontent or disappointment, and that will make me feel ashamed. That will make me feel caught. But what would happen, like the sinful woman, that she was caught in adultery, and Jesus looked at her as if he was contemplating the most precious piece of art. That created that confusion in her heart, like, what is going on? How can he love me, even knowing all what he already knows? Could we imitate that gaze? Could we receive people with that gaze that is trained to see others with the same eyes of God? Why is it so hard, right? Can we train our eyes to see beyond the human misery? If I am so empathetic with my misery, can I learn to be empathetic to the misery of other people? Right? And Mary did that. And with this I finish. Mary did that. She embracing life as it comes, right? With this I finish, because look, Mary embraced the whole person. But when I say whole, I mean not only the whole person, she embraced the wholeness of life. And right now we are in a very dramatic moment in politics, right? And we just got the vote on issue number 1, and I'm not going to get into politics, but I'm going to tell you something. So many of us here claim that we are pro-life. But I want to challenge you, are you really pro-life? Because we say, oh yes, we should defend the life in the womb of that woman. Well, great. I mean, great. But do you actually embrace your own life as it comes? Are you actually giving Jesus your fiat no matter what? Do you stand still in faith, even in moments of tribulation? Or maybe we are actually kind of pro-choice Catholics. What is going on in my heart? Am I actually receiving, like Mary received, the good and the bad, and trust that the good is just the wrapping paper? But there's something beautiful hidden in the mystery of the drama of my life. There's pain, there's woundedness, there's a lot of sorrow, but do I believe that God will never fail? That is what it means to be a pro-life. And this is where the change of culture starts, with my heart. Who cares what happens in politics? If my heart is solid in my faith, why do I mind? I will change the culture by changing the way I embrace my own life. And I take the responsibility. And I will become a better citizen, a better wife, a better sister, brother, daughter, if I embrace my own life as it comes, knowing that it is always beautiful, right? And then, just to finalize, we can do it as a little prayer, right? We can ask Jesus, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and Jesus, may we be so strong that we can be gentle.